So everyone is saying that the world has moved from prompt engineering to context engineering to harness engineering. Is that so? Let's find out. So in 2022, with the ChatGPT 3.5 model, it featured a context window of 4,000 tokens. Now that 4,000 token limit basically had your input prompts as well as your model's output, the generated response in a single conversation. So it functioned as the model's short-term memory or context window. Anything beyond that limit was eventually forgotten. So when we talk of prompt engineering, it started with you write better prompts, you get better answers, you give a system persona to your agent when we are talking to agents. But then this small memory space problem was the constraint. And then we moved on to context engineering. So the question was, how do you recycle this memory to do more with less? When we expanded to context engineering, we talked about tools, we talked about MCP and RAGs. Now it is not going anywhere. That is what gave birth to the modern coding agents. But the problem is the tasks got longer. So if you ask your coding agent to build a full length feature, which would have taken human engineers maybe a couple of days to complete, it will not be able to generate that. Why? Because the context window will fill up. And as a result, the agent will try to summarize the context. Now, when it tries to summarize the context, it basically assumes many things which it should not have. It hallucinates, it results into half generated or half completed features, case test will not be working as expected, and so on and so forth. So agent is technically not broken. It is bounded by its own ability to summarize the previous work as intended. And that is the ceiling of context engineering. And then came harness engineering, which is one layer above. So instead of your agent trying to manage its own memory, we put a harness around it or we put it in a controlled loop, which means you generate the requirements document, you pick one task, you complete that task, you test it, and then load the fresh context, then the next task, and repeat. So that every iteration begins on a clean slate and there is no summarization drift. And here is where it gets really interesting. There's an open source tool called Roo, which traps your agent in a loop. Claude Code adds multi-step tasks as well. But Kiro took a completely different approach. Instead of bolting an harness over onto like an existing ID, they built the entire ID around the harness. So if you notice Kiro's spec-driven mode, the spec-driven development is the harness. Why? Because the spec is your requirements document. The task list is your loop. The fresh context per task is the architecture. I believe as the models get smarter, the harness becomes simpler. You don't need the best model to build a great agent. You need a model driven harness that gets better every time. So there are three layers just to summarize. The prompt engineering is telling us who the agent is. Context engineering is now telling us what it knows. And harness engineering is telling how it is going to work or how it works. Thank you so much for watching. Follow for more.